Eba Research Lab is an initiative of the University of Vienna and Technical University, the Faculty of Social Sciences and the Faculty of Special Planning and Architecture. And the idea was to create the space of exchange and debate and research on the topic of social housing, because the main topic of IBA, of International Building Exhibition, is new social housing. So there is a huge research arena in Vienna. Many people are working in social housing issues, and we said, okay, it is such a fragmented landscape, and we would like to create a space where those people who are working in that field are come together, and we also invite international guests, students, PhD researchers, practitioners who work in the field of social housing, and we try to to focus on different objectives of different topics regarding new social housing. And the first year we started with a topic on mass housing. The second year we discussed the meaning of the social in social housing, and this year we debate the climate change and heating as a challenge for social housing in our cities.
We are having the interim presentation of IBA Vienna now in 2020, and for this exhibition in 2020 we developed different topics as part of the social housing. And on one side we have the sustainable development of city parts, city quarters, but then we also have the climate adaptation and affordability and the new forms of living. So all these topics that we were showing in this exhibition are coming together, and the main goal is the sustainable development of new quarters and also the older ones, and leading it to this new social housing. So the climate adaptation is something that we need to consider and to think about, not only in developing new city parts but also in the existing city parts.
The topic of the Eba Research Lab in 2020 was climate adaptation and mitigation in social housing, and we focused on bottom-up and local perspectives. And the reason why we did it, in particular why we looked at bottom-up and local perspectives, is that there's a challenge between environmental upgrading, retrofitting, renovation of housing, and making the physical structure of housing fit to climate change and social issues, because investment in housing to make it fit for social change is expensive. And there's been over the last years many cases where social housing structures have been upgraded, have been renovated on the cost of the people who have been living there. So, and the term that many people use for this is renoviction, so that people are crowded out of the house or are kicked out of the house because of the increasing costs in energy efficient housing. We looked for initiatives that were coming with a different approach, that were coming with an approach that was driven by the inhabitants, by the people who live there. And we were wondering what in other regions of the world that have a longer experience with being prone to incredible heat or to difficult weather conditions, what they have been doing, and maybe there's something we can learn from this. That was the reason why we came up with this theme. This year's research lab worked under different conditions because we had the COVID pandemic, and different to the years before, where we invited about 30 scholars to come to Vienna and discuss here with us. We had to do it digitally, much of it digitally, so we had a hybrid format. We did some things in Vienna, but we had a few sessions where people were at home, safe in their homes. And we used digital devices to discuss and exchange. And it was incredibly interesting to have these two different realms because of because we reached many people who we wouldn't have reached if they would have had to come to Vienna. So we had a few workshops where we had from every region in the world. We had people participating and discussing issues around social housing. It was very interactive, as much as it can be digitally. Of course, life is always, or in real life, is always more interesting. But at the same time, it helped us to get a real global perspective and to challenge our European view on the thing.
Yeah, we had two very interesting, intriguing examples, one from Indonesia, the other from Brazil. Indonesia is a project called the Water Sensitive City, and the idea is to reorganize a city, an urban space, a built space, against flooding, because these cities are always flooded after the heavy rain period. And in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, it is a project called Usina. It's an organization, a community-based organization, where the idea of self-construction is in the core. And what both projects are bringing into our debate here in Vienna on new social housing is how ecological and social aspects have to interact. So you cannot act against flooding or environmental dangers or risks if you do not mobilize the population, the people are living in the environment. And the same is for the fight against poverty, for example. The initiatives are bottom-up initiatives, because we're living in cities where the governance is very much top-down, and new approaches in overcome the risks of climate change, for example, very often bottom-up driven, and these examples give us an evidence of that.
One of the very important issue is the balance between the top-down developments, concepts, ideas, and the needs and the actions of people living there. So this balance is also about how many open spaces do we plan, our spaces of possibilities, or do we plan them, or how open the concepts of the future are supposed to be, so that people can be encouraged to take action, to take part and design their own environment.
At the same time, we also had some workshops in Vienna where people from this region came here, and we discussed some of the projects that are now highlighted by the International Building Exhibition, and we discussed how in these projects this challenge between investing into the infrastructure so that the infrastructure is fit for heating and the new challenges related to climate change, and keeping the people there, keeping it at a low cost, how this can be balanced.